from there. All right. All right. Can you guys all see that there? Is it coming through?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. So this is our topic for today, guys. We're going to be going through the capital stack. Going to be kind of starting on a basic look at it, getting a little more detailed, and then go from there. And if we it's something we might dive deeper into later on in other Thursday meetings. But really, what is the capital stack? It's just the layers of the capital that go into the acquisition or development of a commercial real estate investment property. Those layers, there's many different layers in the capital stack. The most common ones are going to be senior debt, mezzanine debt, preferred equity, and then common equity. So you probably heard these terms before, but we're going to kind of learn how they place into the capital stack, what they mean and what they do. So the basic commercial real estate transaction that we're all familiar with. Bob wants to invest in a triple net property. He has $2 million to invest in commercial real estate, gets a great property under contract, $3.25 million on the purchase. It's an advanced auto. Everybody loves them. Not as big as some of the other retailers. Great selection of parts. We'll go into that in another conversation. But either way, Bob secures financing, 65% with his local lender for the new acquisition. Bob closes on the deal with his capital and the bank's financing. It's a pretty simple scenario. Capital stack is Bob up top with his equity, debt on the bottom from the bank. So when the property is sold, the capital stack is repaid from the bottom up. Just like you would think, the debt gets repaid. Bob would pocket the rest. In the simple example, the bank financing would need to be paid in full before Bob receives a profit from the sale. It is less risky to be at the bottom of the capital stack. So just in this, trying to break it down real simple, if this property were to increase in value by 500,000 when Bob sells it, the bank's really only ever going to get their 2.1 million back. The property decreases by 500,000, the bank's still going to get their 2.1 million back. That's just the security of being at the bottom of the capital stack there. Bob's kind of at risk or in a spot where he can gain. So however, those at the top of the capital stack have a greater opportunity in return on their investment. The lower in the stack, the lower reward. This kind of just went over. So now if we have a real estate transaction with equity partners, Bob wants to invest the remainder of his money into a multifamily property. He finds a great value add opportunity for 16 million that needs roughly 6 million in improvements. So he's found this property for sale. Hard to believe that thing needs 6 million improvements. It looks pretty clean, but bear with me here. So Bob's lender likes the deal, but would only lend up to 70% loan to cost. This leaves him about 5.7 million that he needs in the capital stack. So now we can see off to the side, Bob's got his remaining from his 2 million, he's got 862,000 left. The bank's willing to come in at 70% with 15,400,000. There's a gap. So that's where other options start coming into play. So Bob is very experienced in multifamily investment space and realizes this could be a very profitable value add project. Bob decides to bring in an equity partner. So that's where the equity would go in. The equity partner takes on similar risk as Bob in the capital stack. However, they will also share in the upside of the investments. So kind of remember, bottom of the stack, less risk. Closer to the top, we get into more risk. We'll go into further detail on that a little bit later. So what Bob has now been able to done, he's been able to secure this multifamily value add project with only 4% of the total budget. However, he now has partners. Remember, the capital stack is paid from the bottom up. When the project is sold, Bob will only be paid after the debt is fully repaid and his equity partners are paid, along with their investment return. So kind of just breaking down the numbers here. Bob's coming in with 13 out of the total equity. Bob's coming in with 13% of the equity. His partners have come in with 87, but it works out to be basically 4% of the total investment. So this is something where you've got somebody coming in, not with a whole lot of the actual capital. Now he is coming in with a whole lot of experience, and that's what makes this deal work in this scenario. So Now we'll talk about the players in the capital stack. We're all kind of familiar with the bottom piece. Senior debt, secured by the collateral, structured financing, typically a bank, credit union, life company. We've seen this all before. This is what we do day in, day out, debt and then equity from a client. However, there's other parts to a capital stack. The next section would be mezzanine debt. So this is subordinate debt to the senior debt. Now notice it's further up the capital stack, so it does have more risk. However, it's still treated as debt essentially. It's going to have an interest rate. It's going to be repaid, just like a debt would. However, mezzanine's a little bit of a goofy spot where it can sometimes be converted to equity, which we'll go into, those situations later in the capital stack and what equity looks like. Mezzanine debt can sometimes be provided by the same debt source for the purchase. It's just at a higher interest rate, possibly a different fund bucket, something like that on their side. But when a lender is telling you, we go to 60%, don't be afraid to ask, do you do mezzanine debt? It's not typical with maybe the banks and credit unions, but the other players out there, the transactional lenders, may have that option for you. So don't be afraid to ask, or talk to your clients. Is it something you've explored if they're currently in figuring out their capital stack? The next is going to be preferred equity. So limited partners in the deal. They receive a set return on their investment. It's usually 8 to 12%. It's passive income. There's no voting rights in this equity spot. It's preferential equity. Basically, they are lower as far as equity goes, they're the lowest point in the equity on the capital stack, but they're still higher up the capital stack. They're not secured on the collateral. Essentially, they're in a risk position. They're not as secure as debt, where if the property's foreclosed on, the debt's getting paid. That's a certainty, assuming there's value in it. The pref equity in a riskier spot, but because of that, they're getting a greater return, 8 to 12% versus debt. Well, that might be getting to 8 to 12% eventually, but right now, really, 5, 6, 7% sort of range. Above that, we're now going to move into common equity. So common equity is further up the capital stack, so therefore more at risk, and it's paid later. The common equity, it doesn't participate in the profits until the preferred equity shareholders' returns have been satisfied. However, there is a high ceiling to the profit they can receive. The profit from this point up in the capital stacks are split based on a predetermined waterfall. So as you'll notice, we still have 5% left in our capital stack, but we've got to a point where common equity, those are the guys that, they aren't paid until the pref equity is paid. And they're coming in with, liquid cash where they have a controlling interest in the operation of it. They have voting rights, things like that. Not necessarily 100% decision maker or anything like that, but they have a voting right. That being said, they're at the most risk, and they are in a spot where they receive the most reward. I think the waterfall is something that we're going to save for another conversation. It can get a little complex with math, and we can kind of break that down as to what that looks like. But just be aware that common equity, those are when you're talking with clients about equity, the difference between common equity and preferred equity is going to be the common equity is going to take on more risk. They are going to take a bigger piece of the pie, and it's something where when you're bringing on common equity, you might be bringing on individuals that have a say-so in the operations. So at the top of the capital stack is going to be the general partner, sponsor of the project, typically the main decision maker or the sole decision maker if there's no common equity investors. That can be an individual. It could also be a corporation or a group of investors as the general partner. The last person to get paid in the capital stack and trusted to perform on the investment. Now, they're last person to get paid because of the waterfall, and that's something we'll talk about at another time. But the general partner should have extensive experience in the asset they are investing in. Basically, this is the guy running the show. So everybody below him is trusting him that he is going to be able to perform and get this done. So this is not the position for the, hey, I saw it on, on an ad on the internet that it's great to invest in multifamily property. This is the guy that says, I've been investing in multifamily for the past 10 years. I'm ready to bring on partners, something more to that effect. He's going to need to have the experience to back it up, not necessarily just capital and liquidity. It's a lot to do with experience. So how can we leverage this knowledge? So we can understand that the general partner's position in the stack, their risk, reward, and interests. So the general partner is responsible for everything below him. He needs to source the debt, the mezzanine financing if needed, the pref equity, and the common equity. So he needs to source all of that and still be concerned about, at the end of the day, how expensive the cost of that equity or debt is, and at what point does he get repaid on his investment. If he's done everything he can to secure this equity, debt and whatnot, but it has to the project has to exceed what his projected rate of return is on it, it's not going to work for him. So that's something to be aware of. So also thinking about the capital stack, we can ask questions of our clients and recommend options outside of debt. When we get clients that are coming to us and saying that they need to get to 85, 80, 95% financing on something, it's quick and easy to say 95% is not an option on debt, but there's other options besides debt, and that's what we need to be thinking of. When we have a client that comes to us and says, I need to get to this specific spot, we can start to have the conversations. Have you do you have any equity partners? Would you be willing to take on an equity partner? Have you thought about that, and done the numbers and crunched the numbers on it? This also puts us in a spot where we can target our approach on the clients that we seek. Reason being is because the general partner would really make a great client for us. General partner is going to typically be the decision maker. So remember, that can be either an individual or it could be an entity. So if you're working with a general partner that is an entity, make sure that you're talking with the decision maker of the entity. The general partner sees and believes in the value in the investment. So they're looking at it as, if it's somebody who works as a general partner, acts as a general partner, they're not looking at it as necessarily, I want to own this property because it's something I've always wanted to own. They're looking at it as, this is an investment. This is a tool to get me to the next level, and whatnot. They look at it as a different way. They're not going to look at us as an expense in it. They're going to look at us as something that they can rely on to guide them through this process of securing debt or equity in the capital stack. And then also they have experience in the asset class and in commercial lending. If they're a general partner, if they've been a general partner on past deals, this isn't going to be their first rodeo. That position comes with experience. So we want to team up with those individuals who have experience, because again, they will see the value in what we do and where we come into play. Our services, there is a cost for it, but in the long run, we will provide them a net benefit financially on it. So that means they can be ideal clients. That's really the person that we want to be getting in front of. So, questions to ask. Who could you introduce me to that operates as a general partner? Point blank, pretty easy. That's obviously you want to get a little more specific on, assets and things like that, but you can just ask, who could you introduce me to that operates as a general partner? Might be somebody that doesn't quite understand the role of a general partner. Rephrase it. Who could you introduce me to that's completed projects with equity partners. Just a little tweak on the wording. There's you might clue somebody into, oh, I worked with somebody in the past who had equity partners, and those are the guys you want to get in front of. So, and then a little more general, who could you introduce me who has experience investing in multifamily properties? Not as quite as specific as getting in front of the GP or the GPs of a project, but if they have a past experience, they might be on track to be a situation where you can have that conversation of, if they have the experience investing in multifamily properties, you can have that conversation of, have you thought about going, to the next level? Have you thought about going bigger, where you could make your capital work harder and obtain more with equity partners to achieve more. So I don't know if you guys want to chime in here, but it'd be great to hear, how, do you approach this now with your contacts? If so, how could you phrase that question, or how have you in the past phrased that question to your clients or contacts?
Yeah, it's a great point, Tom. One thing that I've actually kind of done similar to this is I'll just say, like sometimes people say, like, who can I introduce you to? And I would say someone that has experience with multifamily development, like just something like that, even that can sometimes get us to the GP or whoever it is. But I think, one thing I've learned is that the more specific we are with how we ask is always better. So I like these questions because they're more targeted, where, if I say someone with multifamily development experience, it could be a, limited partner, someone that's kind of over in the capital stack. So that's a good point to hit, hey, who's a general partner I can reach out to?
Yeah, no, I like that. That's good. Yeah. I think even like development in there, or who has done multifamily development, because if they're developing, they're most likely they've had some experience in the past if they're confident enough to pull off a development. So that's a good one.
Yeah, I think this is great. So great job, Tom. I think what I have historically done, and might be helpful too, is to say who is an active, growing, or larger multifamily group, in the multifamily space. You could even get specific to say, who are individuals that are growing, that are doing, acquisition and rehab of multifamily, and or like single family built for rent. So the more specific you can get, the better the target at the end of the day. So I think these are all great questions. And I think, as you unpeel that, it can definitely make it more clear for people to do it. And even if you use the term to say, I'm looking for really good guys that are in this particular space, right? And that tends to have a connotation in the industry of somebody that's ethical. You just kind of use really good guys
I like that.
that are sort of in the space. Typically, that's sort of a buzzword. So
I like that. That's good. Yeah, because it's not just about the guys in that GP position, but we want somebody we can align with culturally.
yeah.
So yeah, if you can ask it as a good guys, yeah, no, that's good. I like that. Cool. Well, your assignment now, to leverage this knowledge. So this next 2 weeks, focus on this, ask these questions of your contacts, and set up 2 meetings with general partners in the next 2 weeks. I think that's one per week, and like to reconvene in 2 weeks time and discuss this. Now, you may not have had both the meetings by then, but it'd be great if you could have one, and then we can kind of go over what that looked like, the approach, the questions, or even the concerns you had going into it, or walked away from on those meetings, and let's keep honing this. But that's your assignment, so write it down, add it to your calendars, or there'll be trouble. Send Dave after you.
Oh.